You know, I think the biggest testament of the Pixel 8a is just the fact that I've been using it for like 3 weeks now, and I haven't really felt a massive need to switch back to my regular S24 Ultra. Now, if this is your first time to one of my practical reviews, then I do need to preface, this is not gonna be a full-fledged, in-depth review covering like scientific data points on why this phone is good or why this phone is bad. No, this is really just my personal opinion on what I thought during my daily usage of the device. And so I'm gonna go ahead and split this up pretty easily. We're gonna start off with the things that I liked, and then we're gonna talk about the things that I didn't like. Okay, first up, we have the performance of the device, which is great. You know, one thing about these A-series devices from Google that I love is that they use the same processor from their more expensive flagship models and put it into the cheaper one. So it doesn't, you know, feel like a slow, cheap device. It actually kind of feels like a flagship as far as performance goes. Now, I will say I'm not like a big multitasker or huge mobile gamer or anything like that. I, you know, have pretty general usage, but at least for my general usage, it's a good experience. Okay, next up we have the display, because right here we are rocking a 120 Hertz AMOLED display, and I mean, what else could you ask for at this price point? I mean, I remember like only 2 years ago with the Pixel 6a, they were still giving us a 60 Hertz screen, but now we got 120, and you know, that's better than Apple's iPhone 15. And so of course, when you combine that high refresh rate display with that flagship processor, you just get an overall pretty smooth experience. But you know what else I really like about this device? The design, because they actually made it look good, unlike a lot of other mid-range or cheaper phones. You know, I feel like sometimes companies will like put all of their effort into their flagship devices, but then they just feel like they have to make a cheaper phone to like make a cheaper option for people, and then they just don't make that one look super good or feel super good. It kind of looks cheap and feels cheap. Well, that is not the case with this phone, because especially the one I have the aloe color, which I think looks so sick. It's kind of like a mint vibe, and you have this matte back, which I believe is plastic, but I mean, I wouldn't even really notice that if I weren't checking for it. It just looks good. You have the metal rails, it feels good. It's a great looking and great feeling device. But this phone isn't just good on the outside, it's also good on the inside, because of course we have Google's software. Now, of course we have Google's Android skin, which is very clean, there's no bloatware, it's great, but really what I'm talking about here is the AI feature, because nearly all of the AI features that they released with the Pixel 8 Pro and the Pixel 8 are also available on the Pixel 8a, which is probably because you have that same processor. So here we have the Magic Editor, we have the Audio Magic Eraser, we have the Best Take feature, we even have Circle to Search now. And then also going along with the software, this phone still gets 7 years of software updates, just like the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro. It's almost like Google's making this an actual focused product rather than just cheaply making a cheaper version because they have to, which is great. And next up, we of course have the cameras, because you know, I think Google has pretty well established themselves as one of the, if not the best phone photography camera. And so yeah, this phone, even though it is the cheaper model, it still takes great photos, and I've even seen it take pretty great video. I can't, you know, say that it's gonna take great video all the time, but in the right circumstances, you can get it to look pretty good. Now, of course, there is no zoom lens here, which is kind of the downside that you get with buying the cheaper phone, but you know, it's to be expected. And personally, I would rather have a super solid main camera and no zoom lens than just kind of a mediocre main camera and a mediocre zoom lens. So I think this is good. And one last thing that I wanted to note here is the haptics, because I don't know if you guys have tried the haptics on Pixel devices and compared it to like other phones, but I'm pretty sure the Pixel has the best haptics of any phone, and that stays true for the cheaper A-series device here. And with that, it is now time we hear about the things that I didn't like. But before we get to that, let's hear about today's sponsor, TESSAN. Now, I've had the amazing opportunity to travel quite a bit this past year, and not only domestically, but also internationally. Like recently, I got to go to Barcelona, Spain to see some cool new tech, but you know what is one thing that you have to bring with you when you travel abroad? A passport, obviously, but you know what else you need to bring? a travel adapter. Because imagine this, you fly all the way across the globe, finally get to your hotel just to find out that you can't charge your phone. And so go ahead and do yourself a favor and pick up a travel adapter. Now this one specifically is cool because not only is it an all-in-one travel adapter, meaning that you can use these buttons to have it adapt to over 200 countries and regions, but it's also a power brick. So you can see the one that I have is 65 watts, and if we look at the bottom, we also have 2 Type-C ports and 2 Type-A ports. And they even sell one that is 100 watts that would even allow you to charge 2 laptops at the same time. And so if you have plans to travel abroad, you can feel free to check out these travel adapters from TESSAN at the link in the description. Now, before we get to the things that I actually don't like, there is one thing that I guess would be considered neutral, and that is the battery life. Because the battery life isn't bad, but it's also not like super great. I mean, I'm probably getting like maybe 5.5 hours of screen on time on average, which is good. It's just not great. Now really, there's not that many things that I didn't like about this phone, but there are a few things that, I can critique, so let's go through them. All right, so first up, we have the screen, which I know I said that I like the screen, and I do, but there is one aspect about it that could be better, and that is the brightness. Like, it does get bright enough for most circumstances, but I feel like I'm having to max it out like a good amount of the time. And I think it's supposed to have a peak brightness of like 2000 nits, so you would think that it would be pretty bright. But yeah, I don't know. I'm having to max it out, so I wish I had a little bit more flexibility there. And then another thing here, also kind of relating to the screen, is kind of an obvious one, but yeah, the bezels are a little thick, and going from like an S24 Ultra that has a very big screen with thin bezels to a phone that has a smaller screen with thicker bezels, like it's a pretty noticeable change. But I will say, after a few days, you kind of just get used to it, and it's not really that big of a deal. But again, it is still a thing. It's noticeable. Then another thing is the phone would get warm sometimes. Like, it was kind of weird because I feel like the phone didn't really get warm for the first maybe 2 weeks that I was using it, but then randomly I had this like 3 days where the phone was getting kind of hot for some reason. I don't know if I was doing a lot of like extra usage of the phone than normal, but then the past few days I feel like it hasn't really been getting hot, so I don't know. Maybe keep an eye out for that if you get this phone, but yeah, I did have times where it was getting pretty warm. All right, and the last thing I'll note here, and I'm not gonna lie, I was considering not even putting this in the video because I'm not even really sure why this was happening, but the phone at times would charge like really slow. Like, I have this charging cable that has a little LED display on it showing how many watts it's inputting into the device that you're charging, and at times it was literally showing like maybe 2 or 3 watts. And I was like, what the heck? Why is it charging so slow? But then the reason I maybe wasn't gonna put this in the video is because I tried to replicate the problem and it started charging good again. Like, it was getting, like 18, 17, 19 watts charging, which, it isn't amazing, but it's pretty good. And so I'm curious, if I literally plug in the phone right now, what are we gonna get? Let's see. 7, 6, 7, 6, 5? See, yeah, that's not great. I will say I am at 85%, and a lot of times phones charge slower when they're closer to fully charged, so that might be it. But anyways, yeah, kind of weird. But overall, if you couldn't tell, I do like this phone a lot. Like, especially the fact that I switched from a phone that's over 2.5 times the price, and I didn't immediately feel the need to suddenly switch back to it. I mean, that says a lot of what this Pixel 8a can do. Now, will I be switching back to my S24 Ultra? Yes, I do like this phone more, so I am gonna switch back, but it's not like I need to immediately switch back because it's that massive of a difference, if that makes sense. Now, if you're considering getting this phone, the one thing I will say is the price point can be kind of interesting because, it comes in at $500, but as we've seen, the Pixel 8 sometimes will be discounted at like $550. So it's like, why would you get the Pixel 8a when you can just get the Pixel 8 for $50 more? So what I'll say is keep an eye on the prices, and if the Pixel 8 is, discounted like that, maybe go for the regular Pixel 8. But if not, maybe the Pixel 8 isn't discounted, then maybe get this one. Or, maybe this phone will get discounted too. Who knows? I don't know. Just keep an eye on the prices, and if it's a good price and it makes sense, then overall, this is a good phone. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed and you thought this was helpful, feel free to let me know in the comments and leave a like on the video. And also subscribe if you haven't. You know, people look at those subscription analytics and they're like, only 20% of you guys are subscribed. And you know, I've looked at it and a lot of people aren't subscribed, so subscribe.